Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Biblenomics, where we discuss the relationship between politics, economics, culture, and religion. In this week's edition, we are going to be discussing art and faith. And to help me go through that, I have a special guest who is a renowned Zimbabwean artist by the name Calvin Chimutua. Now, Calvin has had at least 5 awards to his name and has had at least 30 exhibitions that he's been a part of. And so today we are going to be having an interesting conversation. Join us. Calvin, welcome to Biblenomics.
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you.
Now, my first question to you, Calvin, would be, I think you would agree with me that art has a way of affecting feeling and has power to evoke emotion. Now, when would you say you had the first experience where you realized that art had power?
Well, I don't know if I can call it an L experience, but I experienced this when I went to one of the workshops in Bulawayo on paper prayers, and we were using art as a tool for emotive expression. And after the workshop, I had to work with kids and teach them about the paper prayers, and in the process, they would tell stories that they would never verbalize because I put to them pencils and paper and color, and then I would make them read what they had drawn or painted to me, and you'd find very, very interesting stories, some scary stories. So it was really a powerful thing to see that art can be a very powerful tool of emotive expression, and ever since then I'm very sensitive on what I use on canvas or when I'm drawing or something.
Interesting. I guess the connection between art and feeling can be difficult to interpret. So what kind of research do you do, and how long do you spend researching before beginning on a project?
It depends on the artwork. Sometimes I take time because you sometimes have these blockages when you want to do an artwork, and at times it just comes just like that. But probably your question is more on when I have those blockages, what do I do to get the inspiration back? This is what inspires me. A nice day, a good day. I listen to good music. I have a sincere conversation with somebody. I would have done my devotion in the morning, and I'm in touch with God. And all my sensory properties, they are very sensitive. And from that, when I'm on canvas or when I'm in my sketchbook, it's easy for me to then express an artwork. And research then comes usually later when I have form on paper or on canvas, and then it starts to speak to me. And then I start to research, where does this fit? And sometimes it's nothing really, and then I discard that, in my sketchbook, and nobody gets to see it, or maybe somebody gets to see it. But when everything is in line, when everything is in order, after a form talks to me, whatever shape, color, then I start to interrogate it, and then I build up the painting. It changes, it evolves, and these are some of the paintings that have been really celebrated in my career. So I don't really have a particular formula. I don't like to work with formulas. I try to be more organic. I have an organic approach to things. So sometimes it just comes just like that, or it's a process where I let the artwork speak to me.
And coming back to the question of the children and their drawings that they were making, would you say art in itself can be a form of therapy? Can it be therapeutic?
It is definitely. There is the energy that you get. You know how it is. The mind is very perfect, and the images that we have in our minds are quite vague. And when you express them in whichever way, maybe in music and dance, or on canvas, like in my case, or on paper in the case of the children, the image they get, that they put on the paper, it surprises them. And when they start to interact with it, this is when you start to address the issues that have been hidden, that you could not have snatched out, because they are now it's like they've put their mind, they've betrayed their mind on paper or on canvas with color and everything. The funny thing about how emotive it is, like every color, every shape, it has got a feeling that it has on you. And kids, that they just naturally pick those colors and shapes, and when they tell their stories, when you then use your intellect to interpret it, it's more or less the same story that you get, and they do it subconsciously. So it's quite a therapeutic process and good for the kids, especially if you introduce a psychologist. So that they get to deal with the issues that they're going through. And besides that, even if you don't introduce a psychologist, just the process of making the art, of expressing their joy, their sadness, their loss, it's something that makes them realize who they are and where they are, which is a starting point that is very important for you to know that both your feet, they are on the ground. So it's quite important too, and quite therapeutic.
Yeah, Calvin. Actually, philosophy teaches us that religion was the first cradle of art. Do you view visual art as a kind of spiritual practice?
It is definitely,
Really?
in my opinion, it is definitely, and it's an opinion that I would want to impose on many artists out there, that art is a spiritual process. It's a spiritual journey. If we go back in the Bible, Exodus 31, we're introduced to Bezalel. He's been picked by God, and God inspires him. He gives them knowledge, understanding of languages, and he's given the task to make the Ark of the Covenant. He makes priests' robes. He makes the curtains of the temple. There's a lot of things. He works on wood, metal. So I'm seeing a whitesmith there, blacksmith there, and it's all spiritual. It came from the mighty Creator. So when we take out the spiritual aspect in art, it just becomes a mere thing. That's something that does not last, something that will not have any value. When we talk of value in art, and because everything is spiritual, art in a way, it becomes one of the entities that best explains faith. When we say faith is the substance of things hoped for, things not yet seen. Now, I say art is the medium of expressing things that we do not see.
Right.
Yeah. If you are to build your house, Maureen, you have a certain dream house that you have, and you explain it to an artist, and the artist interprets it, and then gives it to me in architecture, and then there it is. So art is really a medium. So the same way we tap into our cognitive mind, it's a spiritual process. It is a spiritual process, and taking away that just makes it a mere practice. In Zimbabwe, if I come back to our country, music. We have got mbira players, and when they play their mbiras, they get into this trance, and it's the notes, is the coordination, is the harmony in the voices. There's a certain chord that they strike that makes them transcend to that trance.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
There's a lot of artworks that, when people are drawn to a particular image, there is something that relates to them, that is in the image, that makes them drawn to it.
Right.
When one is having an aesthetic experience, what we call an aesthetic experience, something that reminds them of their past. Let me speak of music a little bit, for the viewers to maybe understand my illustration. There could be a happy song that you had, Maureen, when you were really going through a very, very hard time. No matter how happy that song is, when you hear it today, it will remind you of those hard times.
Right, and those feelings you felt.
Yes, and that's an aesthetic experience. And somebody would say, why don't you like this song?
Right.
So the same with art. If you go back to the visual arts, there's a particular imagery that is in your mind that could scare you, that could excite you, that could make you feel good. And when you connect with it, you start to have an aesthetic experience, and you have opened a door. It's like a devotional moment where you're in touch with yourself. And that just becomes spiritual. So it does have that power to evoke and open some doors.
I actually think the engagement of art and faith as a study attends to creative interplay between image and meaning, like you were explaining. And you find that back in the day, you had artists like Benini, who did the sculpture of David, and The Last Supper. Yet in the last 50 years, much fewer works of art have religious themes that are taken seriously. Why do you think that is? Is this a sign of growing secularism, or possibly even a lack of talent?
It is a sign. It is a very loud sign of going secularism. The world view today, or the world today, it is quite driven by images in advertising, in a lot of things, the internet that we are all connected to. Maybe if I go back a little bit, when the images that quite dominated, say around 1450, around thereabout, when we had the Mona Lisa's paintings, and a few years after, when we had the Pieta, Michelangelo's sculpture of which shows Mary's pain, and he's holding the body of Jesus. Very nice work of art. Those images have been very, very powerful. We also have the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican, and the images are really, really quite powerful. And even though Michelangelo didn't want to paint that, but these were quite religious images, and they had positive impact on the society. But as the drive for the new, as the drive for the more of contemporary art or modern art, when modernism started, people wanted to move away as fast as they can from just the Renaissance or the conventional way of doing art. And this is when this was like the spark of secularism. The images that were religious sort of just disappeared in the art. Yeah. And this is probably more to satisfy men's desire. We are quite beings that feast on scandal, especially nowadays in the selfie days. And just knowing about somebody's bad past is quite exciting, and not only being told in rhetoric form, but in images. We prefer to just see terrible images, and that really sparks us. So when modernism pushed, there was less of really religious art, and for some reason the church, then it was the Catholic, which was quite a patronage of the art. It stopped somehow to sponsor or commission artists to do art for the church. There was now a new entity that had come into play, and it was rich. There was now a lot of entertainment. That was we had the television, with the camera, the invention of the camera. Things started to then shift slowly. Yeah. So images were now really coming at very short intervals. Instead of somebody, a few artists painting 100 paintings in a year, we now have millions of images in less than a week.
Why isn't the church commissioning more artists to do more religious artwork?
Okay, my answer is going to be crude. I think the church has gone broke. That's how I can put it.
Has it really?
Or it has gone sort of, how can I put it? It has grown ignorant, rather, of the importance of artists in the society, so that maybe they could be commissioned to actually work on artworks that will really have an impact, on the positive impact on the society.
Whilst you're still there, Calvin, the use of art in churches, do you think there is any art form that can convey something to non-believers? I mean, how can it be used as a tool for evangelism, for example?
It can be used, definitely. It can be used. Remember, images, they are really, really powerful. The human faculty responds to line, shape, texture, color. And these are the different elements that artists play around with to convey a message. So it definitely has an impact to actually evangelize. I know of one artwork that I grew up knowing. It has been of the praying hands. I've seen it over and over, and it would remind me of prayer. It would remind me of some kind of spirituality. I wasn't a serious Christian then, and it it was not the text that was on the artwork, because on the praying hands you'd have different prayers.
Right.
Lord, bless my house, bless my husband, this and that, and there's the praying hands. And as an artistic person, or as a person who responds to images, the first thing that draws to you is the hands, and then you get to see the whole artwork or the whole piece, and then maybe you end up reading the prayer. So images, they are really, really quite powerful. So that would definitely bring people to a devotional life. Art may not really preach the whole gospel, salvation and redemption, but it can open a door where one gets in touch with themselves. It's very easy. Let me speak as a Christian of devotions in the morning, which is the best time to do them. As long as something disturbs your mind, it's very easy to skip that, and that can also become a routine. And you're slowly not getting in touch with God. Now, if that happens when you are having devotions, and art can, in the midst of chaos, just draw you, and you are just there, and you have this image that is just in front of you. It's just compelling you to interact with it, and there is some senses of peace, some senses of saying, calm down, look at me. Then you already have opened. You may not do the whole process of evangelizing, but you have brought somebody to just their space. Because every other time people are fighting for space, but you would have brought somebody to their space where they will say, "Oh, I'm Calvin, and wow, this is something. This is hopeful. This is beautiful." You have just calmed somebody's chaos, and the whole din that is around them has just died down, and they are starting to interact with themselves. Now, this could be godly, whatever the interaction they are having, or it could be just trying to find peace within themselves. So it does have power to actually open a door where evangelism can start.
Do you think there is any art influencing any movement right now? Or rather, movement influencing art?
That's a very interesting question. Unfortunately, the drive today is one for space and recognition, which is a terrible drive. There is fight for who is becoming popular in the art scene in Zimbabwe, and therefore people are actually now losing out. This is how I would put it. Artists are now sort of like losing themselves in trying to impress the art patronage system, and in also trying to win space in prominent galleries. You could pick. I mean, I like having sincere conversations. Like I said earlier, it's one of the things that makes my day go. And I've had sincere conversations with a lot of artists, and seeing them work today, I could pick that they've just lost themselves. You have a conversation with them, and you hear nothing of them in the conversation. It's about how they are flying rather than how they are producing art that is about them, that has their identity at the core.
My next question is in two parts. The first part would be, how would you describe Zimbabwean visual culture? And are there any links between the religious art and the secular part?
Okay, the first part of your question, how do I describe the visual arts movement in Zimbabwe? At the moment, it's alive. Right. That's a good thing about it. It's alive, but I don't think there is much movement that I would really like to see. But I'm liking certain individuals that have taken initiatives to start spaces where there is arts interaction. There is the Njelele art space in the city center in Harare. There is Village Unu. I think it's almost it's about 5 years old or more than 5 years old, which is run by Mishek Masamvu, which is good. There's a movement that is happening there. If I go back a little bit, we've seen Chapungu dying down, and that has killed some kind of movement there, and a lot of
sculptures, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. As far as sculpture is concerned, Chitungu's Arts Center is doing well. Tanganyika, it is somehow slowed down. It no longer have the same energy. So we need to have more spaces that are likened to Village Uno and Jelele Arts Center, so that there is a lot of energies, there is a lot of cross-pollination between artists, and the Zimbabwean movement would then be birthed.
Right.
So at the moment, it's really a bit quiet.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. And the links between religious art and secular art?
Religious art, sculptors, they're doing an okay job. They're probably by getting commissions to do sculptures for, especially the Catholic. I've done a few pieces, but I can't call them religious pieces. I've been commissioned by the Roman Catholic to do portraits of Pope Francis, different claimants that have been before working with the Catholic. Most of the pieces that the cathedral by the 4th Street there, but it's not religious art. It is just a commission to do portraits.
Right.
There is no message in there that is any in some way religious. So the link between that is there is not much activity that is happening. However, there is the link between not the Christian religion, especially musically, through craft and music. I'm talking of Mbira. The Mbira. There's a lot of activity that is happening there, and people, they are really connecting with their deities because of that.
Right.
So in that sense, something is happening there. But in the context of what you're talking about, as far as the Christian religion, there is less that is happening. The little that you see is just churches trying to commission artists to design their stages, for conferences and everything, and it has nothing to do with conveying a religious message.
I suppose there is a gap between Christian art compared with our traditional religion, because our traditional religion has a vibrant presence in terms of music, like you were saying, in terms of mbira, in terms of sculpture, in terms of photography, than there is of Christian art.
Just to take you back then, that reminds me of Serima Mission in Masvingo and Cyrene Mission in Bulawayo. Their spaces, they are bombarded with art, very good, exciting murals, which have got religious messages, and for some reason between then and now, it has somewhat died down. There's also the Italian chapel in Masvingo as well. It was built during the World War II. There's also very interesting murals there that are really, really, really quite exciting. But somehow that movement has died down. It has been the Catholic, and I would give thumbs up to the Catholic, that has somewhat pushed that move of commissioning artists to portray biblical messages in visual form.
Right.
And most of Catholic churches, if you move around, you see them with murals and paintings that are religious. But maybe let me use for lack of words, the contemporary churches nowadays, you really have that.
Right.
You really have space for murals. It's all bombarded with glass, and contemporary decorative designs, and nothing to do with any religious messages. So there is not much of a charge from that.
And finally, Calvin, what is the future of visual arts looking like in New Zimbabwe?
It's quite bright. That's how I can put it. I'm seeing more art spaces being established, where there is different artists, where they'll just be interacting and sharpening each other. I'm seeing also the financial side of it, where definitely art will be paying artists. At the moment, it's just a few artists that are really surviving through just art. A lot of them have taken second jobs to really look after themselves. But in the new Zimbabwe, there is a lot of hope. There's a new minister in the arts, and we are hopeful that they will definitely be looking out for artists. A lot of things that are really changing, in the undercurrencies. So it's quite bright. There is lots of schools that have just introduced art for the past 5 years, and definitely that's going to be another pool that's going to be training our visual artists. So it's definitely going to be a lot better.
Well, thank you so much, Calvin, for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, there you have it. That marks the end of this week's edition of Biblenomics. If you have any comments, please do not hesitate to send us an email. Watch the link at the bottom of the screen. And also, please do respond to our question, do you think art is still relevant? And do you think religious art is still important and has value? Join us next week for a more interesting topic. See you later.
FMTV.